Why does the CEO's espresso machine hiss like Satan's humidifier? I muttered, crawling behind the server rack. Flashlight clutched in my mouth, a mushy banana from 2 days ago stuffed in my pocket. That expensive mechanical monstrosity shared the same wiring as the entire East Wing's HVAC system. A genius design. I only discovered after the catastrophic power outage caused by a latte in 2011. Of course, there wasn't a single document recording it. At this company, besides me, nobody bothered to keep records. But I remembered. I remembered every circuit board, every groan of the pipes, because my brain was the living diary of this building. That morning began like every other day for the past 21 years. I, Miranda Jean Harkins, insert the original brass key from 2002 into the lock at precisely 6:47 a.m., 23 minutes before the official opening time. I oil it twice a year. You'd be surprised how many senior executives don't know how to turn a key if the lock is slightly stiff. They'll immediately assume it's broken, just like how they use their brains. This morning, the cleaning crew stuffed chewing gum down the sink again. Someone in product development left a box of sushi overnight in the mini refrigerator, and the fermented kombucha exploded, splattering everywhere. Technically, it's not my job. There's no clause in the contract that says, the facilities and operations manager has to scrape the seaweed off. But guess who used a laminated calendar and a silicone spatula to scrape the dried seaweed off the smart refrigerator? Me. There are days when I feel like a flesh and blood multi-purpose tape. I struggle to keep this office from collapsing in absolute silence. People use me as if I'm a given, and only realize my existence when something breaks. The old CEO still thinks I'm the receptionist, even though my business card clearly states manager. My inbox is overflowing with 3,200 unread emails, all marked urgent from people who don't even know how to replace a printer cartridge to save their own lackluster careers. Things started to get much worse when they brought in their new HR director, Haley. A recent master's graduate, she spouted trend-setting nonsense, her artificial smile revealing a set of porcelain veneers. Once she pointed to a wall and asked me where the Ethernet port was. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "In there, darling. In the same place where your productivity is supposed to be." She didn't smile. I know I'm not a communications expert or a TikTok star, but I know one thing for sure. 97% of those watching this drama forget to show even the most basic respect to those who laid the foundation. It's like going to a communal meal on an empty stomach, bringing nothing, and then leaving with boxes full of leftover food. Remember that, because respect is what keeps the fire of these petty revenge schemes burning. I didn't go to a prestigious school, nor do I wear blazers that cost as much as my pickup truck. But I know this building inside and out. Not the superficial understanding of a real estate agent, but the understanding I have of a loyal old dog. I know which pipes will groan when it's about to rain. I know which thermometer will go crazy when the humidity exceeds 70%. And I know the main circuit breaker box will creak like a haunted dollhouse if you flip it too quickly. I've kept this company afloat through countless power outages, flooded restrooms, and 3 CEOs with their incredibly stupid decisions. But they've forgotten no recognition, no bonuses, not even a handwritten thank you note from the board. Once, I had to stay up late unclogging the women's restroom after some woman dropped her ID card in it. Don't ask me for the details. The former vice president of finance, walking by, threw me a half-eaten protein bar and said, "You're a real lifesaver, Marcy." "My name is Miranda," I said, but at a certain point, I stopped trying to correct them. I wasn't playing the hero. I was just someone who believed in doing my job right. I was the one who negotiated this lease, the lucrative deal that allowed the company to sit comfortably in a prime downtown location for 1/10 of the current market price. At the time, even a callback from the landlord was a luxury. The company had only 5 employees and a fax machine taped shut. The founder begged me to sign as a guarantor. Damn it, I was the one who signed the entire lease because none of them had good credit. I didn't mind because I considered them family. But like most families, they quickly forgot who paid the electricity bill. Have you ever walked into a room you've spent half your life tending to, only to suddenly realize no one even looks at you unless the printer jams or there are mice in the break room? That's me, invisible until everything went haywire. And then, one dark Monday, it all happened. The HR department sent out a company-wide email announcing a strategic restructuring opportunity. In HR jargon, that phrase is like a mafia boss saying, "Come for a walk with us." My guts went cold. I'd seen enough CEOs wailing over their sparkling water during layoffs to understand what was coming. I was next. But I wouldn't cry. I'd started digging up things they'd forgotten they owed me. And this time, I wouldn't clean up their mess. The meeting invitation arrived at precisely 4:58 p.m., right as I was scraping a dry, sticky burrito off the tempered glass. The email subject line read, "Quick Sync, HR." No context, no warning. The appointment was thrown straight into my workday like a pile of shit in a punch party bowl. The next morning, I walked into the office, punctual as a Swiss watch, wearing my gray cardigan with a hole in the elbow and a stain that looked exactly like the state of Delaware. That cardigan had been with me through 3 CEOs, an office fire, and a baby shower that unexpectedly ended in a divorce. It was my armor. Haley was already seated in conference room B. She smiled like the stepmother in those cheap, melodramatic TV shows. Next to her sat a guy from the legal department I'd never met. His hair was slicked back with gel, his leather shoes gleamed, and he kept caressing a briefcase as if it contained a cure for cancer. "Miranda, thank you for your time," Haley chirped. "We'd like to have a little chat about the restructuring." That word restructuring struck me harder than a sledgehammer. I'd translated it for countless others, held their hands, comforted them, covered their shifts. I knew the script by heart. First a smile, then a stack of files, and finally a hollow apology. "We're heading in a new direction," she said. I stared into her eyes. And that new direction inadvertently doesn't include me, does it? Not a sound. Only the rustling of a file containing frozen benefits being gently pushed across the table. Inside was a generic severance package with more binding terms than a Christmas Eve crime scene, 3 months' salary, a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, and health insurance extending through the month. How generous. Even the name on the decision was misspelled. Miranda J. Hawkins. 21 years of service, and they still couldn't spell my last name correctly. "We require you to hand over your employee ID and keys today," the lawyer added in a flat, emotionless voice, "along with any company assets you currently possess." I took a deep breath, so deep it felt like the pressure could crack the drywall. I reached into my pocket, placing my employee ID card on the desk like a chip on a playing card. Next came the bunch of keys. All 11 were labeled in my own handwriting from 2002, back when I stayed late to manually reprogram the electronic door lock system. "Are you sure?" I asked, my eyes locked on Haley. She blinked. "I mean, are you sure you want these keys back? This is your last chance." She put on her typical HR persona, sympathetic, bland, and as artificial as margarine. "This isn't personal, Miranda." "Absolutely not," I muttered, standing up. "Just remember one thing. You can never manage something you don't understand." I stepped outside before my fiery gaze could incinerate the office. The midday sun was blindingly harsh. The noise of the city pounded in my ears, but my whole body was numb. I didn't cry. At least not in front of them. Not after 21 years of cleaning up messes, fixing machinery, and calming their panicked interns. They wanted to erase me from their memory? Fine, but they'd forgotten something far too important. I didn't drive straight home. I pulled into a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, sat in my cabin with the engine off, and called Lenny. Lenny was the son of my old neighbor, the guy who used to mow my lawn for pocket money. Now he was a formidable real estate lawyer with a Bluetooth headset practically glued to his ear. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Miranda, is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but things are about to get incredibly good." Remember that office lease we made back in 2002? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a long, low whistle. "Oh, that lease. Do they know about it?" I smiled for the first time that day. Not a warm smile, but a deadly one. "They just took back your keys," I said. "So I think it's time to give them back everything they deserve." My house was faintly scented with lemon-scented floor cleaner, and the television was playing old war movies, the only way I could stay awake. I tossed my bag to the floor, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight to the built-in cabinet in the hallway where I kept the file titled, "In case they pull a stupid stunt." I never thought I'd actually have to open it, but the moment had come. The file was a bright pink, with bold black markings. Lease agreement 2002, Miranda only. I pulled it out carefully, as one would defuse a bomb. Inside were the original contract, 7 amendments, a receipt for the reception area carpet that I bought out of my own pocket before the company could afford the furniture, and 3 post-it notes with doodles from the founder's son from the days when the office was just a single room in a Thai restaurant. 21 years ago, they couldn't afford to rent a stall without my guarantee. No credit history, no revenue. Their only assets were a laptop and a fax machine that sounded like a dying raccoon. Randy, the original founder, sat across from me in Denny's and cried, "Miranda, if you don't sign, we'll have to work in my warehouse. My wife will kill me. I didn't sign the guarantee. I leased the entire space in my personal name to help them get started." Randy said he'd change the name soon. But we never had that conversation again, because after that, it was always me, alone, who renewed the lease, dealt with the building management, coordinated the air conditioning installation, carpet replacement, and dealt with the foul smell in room B that was later discovered to be a dead squirrel in the insulation. They never removed my name from the original lease. They didn't even remember it existed. I sat down at the table, opened a can of Diet Dr. Pepper, and began poring over the fine print of the terms as if my honor were buried somewhere in this legal jargon. Page 12, Section 9B. Lease renewal must be given in writing by the tenant to the landlord no later than 30 days before the lease expires. I blinked. Read it again. Then I checked the lease expiration date. August 1st, today is August 3rd, 2 days past the deadline. They completely forgot to send the renewal document. Not an email, not a single notification from the legal department, not a word from Haley. They were too busy, flattering each other and playing the game of changing positions and titles to miss the most. Crucial deadline that determines the physical existence of this company. I leaned back in my chair. A slow smile spread across my face. The kind of smile of someone who has just realized the universe has given them the ultimate key to overthrowing the kingdom. It wasn't just that they fired me, but the way they fired me, treating me like a stain on a window pane, like an outdated middle-aged woman with a stack of files full of worthless, trivial information. But they didn't know that it was that very trivial information that ran this entire building. They forgot that I was still the only legally recognized tenant on paper. And now, they're just people acting like illegal land grabbers who own expensive espresso machines. I picked up my phone and started reviewing. The building insurance contract? Still in my name. The HVAC maintenance contract renewed last year? Sent directly from my personal email. The office cleaning staff only show up because I transfer Venmo to their manager each month from an internal fund I set up myself. All public utility services are routed through a business account I've had with the city since 2005. Everything that runs the lifeblood of this office runs through me. I could have warned them. I could have sent a reply email attaching the contract terms with a subject line like, "Hey, you guys forgot something important." But that's absolutely not what they would do if they were in my position. No, if I switched roles, they'd kick me out immediately and replace me with some low-paid freshman who wouldn't even know how to reset the main circuit breaker without Googling it. So, I closed the file. I poured myself another Dr. Pepper, and I decided for the first time in 2 decades, I would be silent. Let them experience this terrifying silence. Let that screeching espresso machine be their first clue. Because right now, they are trespassing. And I have all the legal documents to prove it. I chose the high heels I'd normally wear to church to meet with the building manager, not because I wanted to look fancy, but because I wanted the sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor to be truly resounding. I wanted the whole world to hear my debt-collecting footsteps. Thomas, the building manager, looked up from his computer screen as I entered his office on the 4th floor. He was the kind of man who always smelled faintly of printer ink and had 17 different highlighters on his desk for no damn reason. "Miranda," he said, surprised. "I didn't think I'd see you here so soon." I smiled. "Just consider me here as the heir apparent." He tilted his head, looking at me like a bewildered golden retriever. I sat down, opened my briefcase, and handed him the original contract file along with 7 revisions. Everything was perfect. Even the sticky note with Randy's flying burrito drawing from the 2009 meeting was still there. "I want to confirm something," I said. "No written renewal requests were submitted before July 1st, right?" He blinked and began typing away on his keyboard. Yes, nothing from the company." I thought they were switching to a monthly lease while waiting for the new contract. "We haven't received any official document." I nodded, my face as expressionless as a tombstone. "Good. Because under Clause 9B, the contract automatically switches to a monthly lease without prior notice. And now, I pulled another document from my pocket, printed on high-quality, thick paper with gold embossed lettering. I wanted to formally inform you of the termination of this lease. Effective 30 days from today. Thomas's eyebrows shot up so high, I thought they were about to submit a resignation letter from sheer frustration. Wait, you terminated it? Exactly. As the sole legal tenant on record, they missed the deadline, and I found a new tenant willing to take their place. Thomas swallowed hard. They know about this? The new tenant is a healthcare startup called Bloom Pulse, a company brimming with foreign investment and desperate for a prime location to set up a Himalayan salt therapy office. I happened to meet the founder at a farmer's market last year. She was willing to pay 3 times the current rent. Thomas smoothed his thinning hair. This is going to be a big problem. Trouble, I stood up, is the only thing they've thrown at me after 2 decades of loyalty. Back home, I opened a new legal document on my laptop and filled in the blanks. Plaintiff, Miranda. Jean Harkins, defendant, current occupant, offices. Suite 211 to 221. Reason for evacuation. Gross breach of contract, failure to renew, and unauthorized subleasing without the owner's consent. Just discovered they secretly sublet a back room to a cryptocurrency advisor without telling me. Another fatal mistake by the office's legal department. I filed the application. Online through the county portal, paying an additional fee to expedite the process. The system's confirmation bell rang with a crisp ding, making me feel 10 years younger, more effective than any Botox injection. Soon after, exactly as planned, Haley emailed me. Subject: Request for confirmation of company property return. Dear Miranda, I hope you're well. We're writing to confirm that you have returned all company property, including documents, keys, employee ID cards, and other physical or digital assets belonging to the company. Please reply to confirm completion. Sincerely, Haley. I didn't hesitate. I pressed the reply all button because I knew Haley always liked to CC half the company to show she was busy working. My reply was short. Fully returned, including those assets you forgot I was holding. I pressed send and leaned back in my chair. That building had meant so much to me. I'd watched it grow from bare plaster walls and tangled Ethernet cables into a magnificent office. I'd had more lunches at that reception desk than at my own, laughed with interns, cried when my pet dog died, and someone quietly left a bouquet of flowers on my break room table. But every love has its limits, and mine were completely exhausted the moment they pushed that file across the table. I wasn't just seeking justice. I was seeking ownership of my own life. 2 days later, I stood in my sun-drenched room, one hand watering my orchid, the other clutching a registered envelope from the district court. A thick envelope with a fresh, original signature and a bright red administrative seal. Plaintiff, Miranda Jean Harkins. Defendant, the company occupying Suite 211-221. Contents, notice of termination of occupancy and urgent removal of property. My name was printed in bold on the first page. It felt strange, like reading your own eulogy while sipping your morning coffee. Only this wasn't a death, but a powerful rebirth. At the same time, across the city, a similar envelope arrived at the reception desk at precisely 9:13 a.m. The building management had sent it via express mail, along with a copy emailed for legal assurance. Standard procedure, notice of eviction within 48 hours due to a serious breach of contract. The new tenant was ready to take over, but ironically, the receptionist that day was a new temporary employee. Her name tag read Amber in glittery pink ink. She probably thought it was spam and tossed it straight into the recycling bin, sandwiched between an expired diet cookie box and a broken plastic laminating machine. Meanwhile, upstairs in the CEO's office, the company's leadership was busy flattering each other with meetings about IPO plans and brand repositioning. One guy was enthusiastically giving a presentation about breaking vertical boundaries, something I couldn't understand at all. I saw their presentation slides later on LinkedIn. A woman grinning broadly while eating a salad and pointing at a whiteboard. What a great breakthrough. They were too busy swimming in the mud of their own ambitions to notice the tide receding beneath their feet. My phone rang. It was Dan, the maintenance guy. Miranda, are you okay? Something really strange is going on here. The reception just got a subpoena or something from the court, but the management is deliberately keeping it under wraps. The atmosphere is incredibly tense. Dan was one of the few decent people left in that place. He was quiet, knew how to change fluorescent light bulbs without complaining. I almost texted back, "I'm fine," but that would have been a lie. I texted, "I'm more than fine, Dan. They finally got to see me." At exactly 8:03 a.m. the next day, Haley strolled into the building like a glamorous mannequin emerging from a shopping mall. Holding an almond latte, her beige high heels clattered on the floor like a self-playing soundtrack. She stopped at the reception desk, bestowing a forced artificial smile upon the temporary employee. "Any message for me?" Amber blinked. There's some strange note stuck on the CEO's door." Haley rolled her eyes, probably thinking it was another aggressive protest note from the IT team. Last week, they'd stuck a Danny DeVito meme under the thermometer after someone set the temperature to 28 degrees Celsius. But when she reached the second floor at 8:07 a.m., she froze in front of the CEO's office, her teeth bared like a python spotting a pack of panicked prey. A bright, reflective orange eviction notice, laminated and secured to the doorknob with a plastic cable tie, bore the signature and sealing stamp of the district court. Exhibited notice due to breach of contract, emergency, exit period 48 hours. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as if she'd overdosed on oatmeal, frantically calling the building's security team. She tried to use her fingernails to peel the notice from the glass, but the specialized tape held it firmly in place like a final judgment. At 8:30, the CEO walked in, his unkempt beard and Bluetooth headset still on, ready for his usual morning market conquest. But what caught his eye was Haley pacing back and forth like an ant on a hot skillet, the entire marketing team huddled together whispering, and a legal document plastered across his door like a game-over display. He snatched the paper, read it, blinked once, then twice. At 9:02, his phone rang. It was Thomas. "Mr. Altman," Thomas said in the standard tone of a professional building manager, "I'm calling to confirm the execution of the lease termination order. We sent certified mail and email notice 2 weeks ago, but received no response. We are forced to assume your company's silence is consent to termination." "Consent my ass," Altman roared into the phone, his voice hoarse. "Who would ignore a 30-day eviction notice unless they're insane?" "That's exactly what I was wondering, sir," Thomas replied, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. At 10:15, someone in the legal department finally figured out the plaintiff's identity. Haley opened her laptop, flipping through the scanned court documents attached to the forgotten email. The plaintiff's name appeared clear as day. Miranda Jean Harkins. "Miranda," she whispered. Her face drained of all color. Dan from the maintenance team, standing in the break room, nodded respectfully. "I told you so. Don't mess with her." The call came from the CEO's number at 7:42 p.m. I was busy rearranging my spice cabinet alphabetically. Women need to maintain order somewhere in this chaotic world. The screen lit up with the name Altman Nathan, CEO. I let it ring twice, 3 times, then answered on the 4th ring. Miranda speaking. He didn't beat around the bush, roaring like a cornered beast. "What the hell is going on? You have no right to do this. You're destroying an entire company. Do you know what this will look like in the newspapers? The board is going crazy. The investors are..." I interrupted him with a soft sigh, turned on the speakerphone, poured myself a glass of red wine, and leaned back against the kitchen counter as if preparing to watch my favorite sitcom. "Nathan, let me stop you here. You fired the only person who held the keys, who possessed all the operational and legal records of this building. You didn't even bother to check who signed the lease for the past 21 years. We thought..." "That's your problem," I said calmly, taking a sip of wine. "You all take things for granted. You take everything for granted, about me, about the company, and about my values. I'm not stabbing you in the back. I'm just responding to how you treat me. The difference is, I'm prepared." I opened my laptop and sent a pre-written email to the entire board of directors, CCing the legal department, Haley, and especially Dan so he could see the fun. The subject line was, "Return company assets as requested." Attached were the original lease agreements and their breaches of contract. This won't go unaddressed with the board. The CEO gasped. "Oh, they'll do what they always do," I interrupted. "They'll protect themselves, and they'll probably throw you to the wolves if they're hungry. But they won't call me because I have all the legal paperwork, and Bloom Pulse has already transferred 2 months' deposit. I'm not selling out the company, Nathan. I'm just stopping carrying it on my back." There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line before it hung up. I put down my glass of wine, not smiling, not triumphant, just feeling an invisible weight of decades lifted from my shoulders, like paint peeling off after a major storm. By Monday morning, Suite 211, once their pride and joy, had become a chaotic battlefield. They had to hastily hire U-Haul trucks to get rid of the Herman Miller chairs and half-eaten Keurig coffee capsules. Haley, wearing oversized sunglasses to hide her swollen eyes, yelled into the phone as if negotiating world peace. Altman, in his expensive suit now drenched in sweat and his face flushed with rage, had completely lost control. He hoisted a folding chair and hurled it straight at the side of the U-Haul truck with a deafening crash that echoed through the surrounding buildings like a funeral bell for his ego. Someone filmed it and posted it online with the caption, "When office karma hits faster than your IPO plan." I walked out into the hallway of my house. On the wall next to the family photos, I attached a brand new small brass hook. I took the original 2002 brass key from the bunch and hung it there. The company's assets had been fully repaid, only this time it came with an exorbitant interest rate that they had to pay with their entire careers. The sound of the folding chair hitting the side of the U-Haul truck that day not only ended a chaotic morning, but it also officially marked the end of an era. The CEO throws chair video shot straight to the top of global tech forums. People weren't just mocking Altman's helplessness, but began dissecting the underlying cause. How could a multi-million-dollar tech company be evicted from its headquarters in just 48 hours by a former facilities manager? In business magazines, Miranda Jean Harkins's name suddenly became a symbol of the hidden power of the silent employees. Experts called it the most expensive lesson about neglecting a company's operational memory. Meanwhile, I turned off my phone, enjoying my first week off in 21 years. No midnight alarms, no unreasonable emails. My home is filled with tranquility, a luxury I've traded my youth for, bestowing upon those who don't appreciate it. 3 weeks after the eviction, I received an invitation to meet from Chloe Vance, the young founder of Bloom Pulse, the new tenant of Suite 211. We arranged to meet at a sun-drenched cafe at the foot of the old building. She appeared with a completely different energy from Haley. No empty rhetoric, just enthusiasm and a clear respect in her eyes. "Ms. Miranda," Chloe said, pushing a glass of dark green juice toward me, "we've moved into our new office. It's fantastic. The air conditioning is incredibly quiet, and every network cable is meticulously labeled. My team knows it's the result of over 2 decades of your work." I took a sip of the juice. It tasted like mowed grass, but not terrible, and smiled. "I'm just doing what a manager should do. Ms. Vance, that's why I'm here," Chloe said frankly. "Bloom Pulse is expanding with 3 more branches in the city center. We need someone who truly understands how to run a building, someone who knows every brick of it, not just someone who can draw slides. Would you be our senior director of operations and property management?" I looked at the file Chloe had placed on the table. This time it wasn't a cheap layoff wrapped in lies. It was a formal employment contract with a salary double what I'd received at my previous company, plus 2% preferred stock options and a crucial clause: absolute autonomy over personnel and budget for the facilities department. "I know this price still doesn't fully reflect your experience," Chloe added, her eyes sincere. "But I want to prove that at Bloom Pulse, those who keep the lights on are the first to be celebrated." I flipped through the contract. No cryptic wording, no hidden agendas. My name was printed in bold, precise, and dignified. Miranda Jean Harkins. "You have one condition." I looked up, meeting the young woman's gaze. "I want complete control over hiring my team. And the first person I want to bring in is Dan from the old maintenance team." Chloe laughed, a hearty, refreshing laugh. "Dan applied for the job last week, Auntie." He said that without Miranda, he'd rather be a freelance plumber. On my first day back at Suite 211 under a completely new identity, I chose a sharply tailored navy blue blazer over my old cardigan. My heels clicked on the marble floor of the lobby, but this time, it wasn't the sound of footsteps seeking justice in the shadows. It was the sound of a true boss. The office had transformed. The old, drab plaster walls had been replaced with refreshing green accents, large potted ferns, and a pleasant eucalyptus scent permeated the air. But what made me smile was that the old CEO's espresso machine was gone. In its place was a modern bar with 2 top-of-the-line industrial espresso machines, each connected to an independent electrical system. "Good morning, Director Harkins." Dan stood at the bar, dressed in his brand new ash gray uniform, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand, facing me. "Good morning, Dan. How's the HVAC system in the East Wing?" I asked, taking my coffee. "Perfect, ma'am. I've checked the entire circuit breaker box according to your manual. Not a single hiss." My new office was located right where Altman's old office used to be, a corner room with the best view of the city square. Chloe had prepared a large oak desk, a high-end ergonomic chair, and a large glass shelving unit for my files. On the desk was a large bouquet of orchids accompanied by a handwritten card from the entire Bloom Pulse staff. "Welcome home, Miranda. Thank you for keeping our foundation strong." I sat down in my new chair, feeling the comfortable support my back deserved after years of sitting in my old, broken swivel chair. The internal phone rang, and the young assistant's gentle voice said, "Miranda, some people from your old company are in the reception area wanting to see you. They don't have an appointment. Would you like to see them?" I took a sip of coffee, the mild bitterness mingling with the creamy richness of the milk. "Let them in, but only allow those who genuinely have business to discuss in." 5 minutes later, the door to my office opened. It was none other than Altman and Haley, but gone was the arrogant, smug look of a Macy's mannequin or a CEO steeped in lies. Altman looked 10 years older, his suit wrinkled, his eyes dark with sleep deprivation. Haley stood timidly behind him, her artificial smile gone, clutching a stack of documents with a pitiful expression. "Miranda?" Altman began, his voice hoarse. He paused for a moment before correcting himself. "Director Harkins. Thank you for agreeing to see us." I didn't stand up, nor did I offer them a seat. I simply clasped my hands together, leaned back in my chair, and looked at them with the calm gaze of someone I'd met, as if they were strangers. "Get straight to the point. Mr. Altman, my schedule is quite busy today." The company is in a very dire situation," Altman said, his voice trembling. "After the eviction, the investors withdrew their capital en masse. Our temporary office in the suburbs has been experiencing constant power outages. The server system has crashed, and nobody knows how to recover the operational data from the old system except you. The board has dismissed me. Today is my last day at the company." The former CEO stepped forward, placing a check with a large number of zeros on my desk. "This is the compensation for 21 years of your honor and salary that the board of directors has urgently approved. We only ask one thing of you. Please hand over the copyright and the old operating system structure to our new technical team. Otherwise, the company will go completely bankrupt by the end of this month." I looked at the check, then at Haley. The HR girl who had told me, "This isn't personal," was now teary-eyed, whispering, "Ms. Miranda, I'm sorry. It was my impulsiveness, my lack of understanding. Please save the company. Hundreds of other employees will lose their jobs if the company closes." I remained silent for a long time. The silence in this large room lasted so long that I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. I felt neither triumphant nor angry. When you've reached a higher position, revenge isn't about trampling on others, but about proving that they have absolutely no weight in your life. "I won't accept this money for personal gain," I said, holding up the check and handing it to Dan, who was waiting at the door. "Dan, transfer the entire amount to the city's unemployment support fund in the name of the silent employees." I turned to Altman and Haley. "As for the operating system, I packaged all the standard instruction manuals onto a hard drive and sent it to your engineering department last week. I did it not for you, but for the interns and poor office workers who are innocent in the leadership's incompetence." Altman looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of astonishment and profound shame. He bowed deeply. "Thank you, Miranda. You truly are a saint. No, you're the only one who got it right in that place." As the two old men shuffled out of the room, I breathed a long sigh of relief. The past had truly closed behind that door. That afternoon, I held a short meeting with the entire maintenance and new facilities team at Bloom Pulse. Sitting around the large round table, I was no longer the one sneaking under the rack with a banana in my pocket. I stood before the whiteboard, beginning to share my hard-won experiences. "Operating a building isn't about fixing things when something breaks," I wrote on the board. "Understanding. It's about listening to the building breathe, understanding the language of every pipe, every electrical circuit, and most importantly, respecting the efforts of those around you. From today, you are the backbone of this company, and I will ensure that none of you become invisible." Rumbles of applause erupted in the glass-enclosed meeting room. Dan looked at me with pride, while the other young people took notes of my words with utmost respect. At 5 p.m., as the golden sunset bathed the city in its warm glow, I took my cup of chamomile tea and stepped onto the rooftop of the building. A cool breeze from the river dispelled the lingering heat of summer. From here, I could see the entire scene of people and vehicles bustling back and forth below. Chloe came up and stood beside me, her hands resting on the railing. "What are you thinking about, Miranda?" "I was thinking about that everything in this world has its own cycle," I smiled, watching the streetlights begin to come on. Like an HVAC system after a period of overload, it needs to be depressurized and the filters replaced so it can continue to blow out fresh air. Chloe nodded, looking at me admiringly. "I'm so glad you chose to stay here and help me build that new filter." "Me too, Chloe. Me too." That evening, I returned home at 6:30 p.m., a record-breaking early hour for me in the past 20 years. My house still faintly smelled of the familiar lemon-scented floor cleaner, but the feeling of loneliness and emptiness had completely vanished. I walked into the hallway, standing before the wall where the family photos hung. On the small brass hook I'd attached a few weeks earlier, the original 2002 brass key gleamed in the warm yellow light. I reached out and gently touched the key's smooth surface. It had completed its historical mission, opening the door of patience, closing the door of injustice, and finally, opening a brilliant new chapter in Miranda Jean Harkin's life. I smiled, pulled out my phone, and messaged the new team's group chat. "Tomorrow we'll begin upgrading the building's solar power system. Get ready, my friends." I put away my phone and went into the kitchen to prepare a delicious dinner for myself. The sweetest revenge isn't seeing your enemy fall, but realizing you're living a happy, free, and highly valued life. And tonight, I'll sleep soundly because I know that tomorrow my world will function perfectly. A year after the U-Haul disaster, Suite 211, under my management and Bloom Pulse's leadership, had become the city's model green office. I was spotless, now wearing fine silk suits, and commanded a team of 15 skilled maintenance workers led by Dan. The Miranda Operations Manual had been digitized into proprietary building management software, bringing me a steady stream of monthly royalties. I had my own office with soundproof walls and a gold-plated coffee machine that ran so quietly it was practically silent. However, the peaceful life of a top-tier chief operating officer didn't last long when this 40-story building suddenly changed hands. The multinational real estate corporation Vanguard Asset acquired the entire central complex with the goal of maximizing profits at all costs. And the one sent to take over the building was a familiar face. Haley. "Long time no see, Miranda." A familiar, high-pitched voice rang out from the reception area. I looked up from my computer. Haley stood there, still sporting that porcelain-toothed smile, but this time she was wearing a Vanguard badge, the Vice President of Regional Property Management. Apparently, after being fired from her old tech company, she had quickly used her cunning and family connections to climb to a higher position in this real estate conglomerate. Following her was a young engineer, clutching a tablet with an arrogant expression. "This building is now owned by Vanguard." Haley placed a new document on my desk, her eyes gleaming with vengeance. "We're implementing AI automation across our entire facility system. Your manual maintenance team will be reduced by 80%. Starting tomorrow, all HVAC, electrical, and plumbing scheduling decisions will be automatically calculated by our algorithms. Miranda, your days of using notebooks are over." I looked at Vanguard's AI-powered energy optimization plan. In theory, it cuts operating costs by 40% by shutting down backup cooling systems and forcing transformers to run at full capacity during peak hours. The young engineer accompanying her confidently declared, "Our AI algorithm is trained on data from thousands of New York skyscrapers. It never makes mistakes." "Young man," I casually pushed the file back to Haley. "New York doesn't have the 98% humidity monsoon season like here. This building is built on an old underground aquifer. If you shut down the negative pressure pumps in basement B3 for more than 6 hours to save electricity, the foundation system will suffer from reverse osmosis." Haley scoffed, interrupting me. "That's old-school conservative thinking. Vanguard is a trillion-dollar corporation. We believe in system data, not the feeling of a facilities manager. The layoffs take effect from Monday. Good luck with your outdated algorithm." Dan slammed his hand on the desk in my office after hearing the news. "Miranda!" That Haley wants to fire us and replace us with those cheap sensors? We have to sue the board. No, Dan, I smiled, taking a sip of hot chamomile tea. Bloompulse's contract with the building is a separate contract. They can't fire you, but they have the right to change the building's overall system. Let them do it. But then the building will... Have you forgotten the core principle, Dan? I looked at my close friend. Those who don't appreciate the foundation must experience what it feels like when the foundation collapses. Tell the team to pack up all their personal belongings, leaving only what belongs to the building as per the agreement. From this moment on, their AI system will self-destruct. The following Monday, Vanguard's AI system officially took over the building. Everything went perfectly for the first 3 days. According to Haley's reports, electricity costs plummeted, and all floors were temperature-controlled by automated sensors. Haley posted continuously on LinkedIn praising the digital transformation revolution sweeping away manual management thinking. But this 40-story building wasn't a computer. It was a living entity. On the 4th day, a sudden heavy thunderstorm hit the city. Humidity soared from 60% to 95% in just 2 hours. Vanguard's AI system, programmed to Western standards, immediately ordered all outdoor pressure relief valves to shut off to prevent rainwater from entering, and reduced the power of the eastbound fan to conserve energy. That was the fatal mistake I'd been avoiding for the past 20 years. At 11 p.m., my phone vibrated violently. Not from the system, but from Chloe, the founder of Bloompulse. Miranda, something strange is happening in my office in Suite 211. All the tempered glass is sweating profusely, and the wooden floor is starting to warp. The air conditioning is blowing out hot air. I jumped up, put on my coat. Come here immediately. Tell all your night shift staff to leave the office, and shut off all power to the Bloompulse server immediately. When I entered the building's lobby, the scene before me was like a disaster movie. Due to the extremely high humidity and the AI-controlled ventilation system, condensation had occurred on a massive scale. Water dripped from the plaster ceiling onto the marble floor like an indoor rainstorm. Vanguard's smart sensors began generating false alarms, triggering the automatic fire doors to slam shut, trapping dozens of overtime workers from other companies inside the floors. In the control room, Haley and the young engineer were in utter panic. Their tablet screens were glowing red with error messages. The AI system, receiving too many false alarms from water-damaged sensors, had entered an infinite loop. It had begun automatically shutting down the entire elevator system to protect the core, leaving 20 elevators frozen in midair. "Reset the system! Quickly!" Haley screamed, her mascara smudged by sweat and dripping ceiling water. "No! The system is completely frozen. The outdoor pressure relief valve is electrically jammed, and the HVAC pipe pressure on the rooftop is rising to dangerous levels." The young engineer cried, his hands trembling as he desperately typed on the keyboard. The control room door opened. I stepped in, holding an old rubber-covered flashlight, followed closely by Dan and the maintenance team, fully equipped with hammers, pliers, and protective gear. "Miranda, help us!" Haley rushed towards me as if seeing a lifeline. "You know how to shut down this system, right? The pressure in the machine room is about to explode." "I warned you, Haley," I said coldly, staring at her. "Your algorithm doesn't know that when humidity reaches 95% with heavy rain, the east-facing pressure relief valve must be opened manually because its electrical circuit will short-circuit." I turned to Dan. "Dan, bring a sledgehammer to the roof, break the electronic lock on the pressure relief valve, and use a crowbar to pry the mechanical valve out. Team 2, follow me down to basement B3. The negative pressure pump is about to be flooded." I dashed down the dark, deep basement stairwell. Water from the underground aquifer had already begun seeping through the cracks in the concrete floor as the AI system shut down the pump for optimization. The roaring sound of the water was like a monster awakening underground. The water was knee-deep in basement B3. The main switchgear box for the backup pump system was in the corner, locked shut with a Vanguard digital lock that had lost power. "Get out of the way!" I yelled, snatching a crowbar from a young maintenance worker and using all the strength of someone who had spent half their life here to smash the smart lock. A crisp metallic clang echoed. I flung open the switchgear cover, fumbling in the darkness, relying on my millimeter-accurate memory. Green wire connected to auxiliary switch number 4. Red wire bypassed through the thermal relay. I muttered. I slammed the rusty brass lever from 2002. A loud roar erupted. The huge old pump, which Vanguard's AI system had marked as obsolete and needing removal, shuddered to life. The engine roared to life, beginning to pump thousands of cubic meters of water, which were then dumped into the city's sewer system. 15 minutes later, from the rooftop, Dan announced over the radio, "Miranda, the mechanical pressure relief valve has opened. The HVAC pressure is dropping." The automatic emergency exits on all floors released their latches. Hundreds of people panicked and rushed out the stairwells, escaping safely. The water on the glass surfaces began to evaporate, and the air conditioning system started blowing cool air again. The 40-story building stopped groaning, returning to its original state of equilibrium under the control of flesh and blood human hands. I walked into the main lobby, soaking wet and covered in grease, but my eyes were shining brightly. Haley was sitting on the waterlogged marble floor, her $1,000 tablet's screen shattered. The top executives of the Vanguard Group from New York were present via an emergency video call on the large screen in the lobby. The chairman of the board of Vanguard looked through the camera, witnessing the entire scene of devastation and my image standing firm in the center of the crisis. He spoke, his voice sharp and resonant throughout the hall. "Ms. Haley, you are immediately dismissed for egregious negligence and causing millions of dollars in damage to the company's assets. Vanguard doesn't need fake LinkedIn reports. We need real competence." He looked directly at me through the screen, bowing respectfully. "Director Harkins, I've heard of your reputation, but our arrogance has cost us dearly. From today, Vanguard wishes to sign a long-term strategic partnership agreement with your asset management company. We want you to manage all 5 of our skyscrapers in Southeast Asia, with a budget of your choosing." Haley looked up at me, her eyes filled with despair and humiliation, just as they had looked at me in Conference Room B a year ago. But this time, I didn't even bother to look back at her. 2 years after that tech crisis, Harkins Operations, a heritage management and operations company, had become the nation's largest infrastructure services corporation. I sat in my top-floor office overlooking the dazzling cityscape. Beside the 2002 bronze key on the Wall of Honor, there was now a gold-plated steel crowbar, a testament to the night I saved the building from collapse. Dan was now the company's National Chief Technology Officer, mentoring a new generation of young engineers who not only knew how to type on keyboards, but also how to listen to the groans of the pipes in the basement. I took a sip of coffee, the bittersweet taste spreading through me. They had once wanted to make me invisible, to replace the heritage with emotionless algorithms. But in the end, they realized an eternal truth. Technology can build skyscrapers, but only understanding, dedication, and the quiet efforts of people can keep those skyscrapers standing against the storms of life.